Hi everyone, we are Team Kesey 8. My name is Zoe.
My name is Jake.
Hi, I'm Illyria.
Hi everyone, I'm Ethan.
Hi everyone, I'm Garrett, and welcome to our presentation.
I wanted to look more in depth at the first story, which is D-Tank Kickout. In this story, Kesey describes his time in the SM County Jail and the individuals he meets while there. The main theme that I noticed while reading this was that of injustice. The first instance of injustice is in regard to when debris is being checked in. Lieutenant Girder kind of runs his own law in the institution, and this is filled with indifference and attentiveness. And basically, debris, who is, as we know, Kesey, is just another fish in the pond. Another form of injustice is the extreme amount of punishment that debris received for a relatively small crime of marijuana possession. And this includes 3 years probation, a large fine, and 6 months of imprisonment. And kind of in regard to reading it, it was crazy that people back then who smoked marijuana got such hefty punishments, whereas some, like today, living in Oregon and stuff where it's legal, it's just crazy to see the contrast there. And it was also cool how Kesey's character was so enthralled with wanting his reading back, and it was sad that he didn't get his 2 journals back when he left, because who knows what kind of wonderful pieces were in there that we could have gotten.
So I'm going to be talking about the second story that was assigned for this week, which is The Day After Superman Died. Like the other stories, this story is from Kesey's perspective under the guise of Devlin Debris. And it takes place on the Kesey farm near Eugene, Oregon. And there are basically 3 parts to the story. So the first part is there's this young, quote-unquote, blonde boy who's telling Kesey about his experiences at the Woodstock Music Festival in New York, which took place during August of 1969. And basically, so I noticed in this story that it seemed like Kesey was resistant to hearing about it. And to me, that illustrated his wistfulness about not having attended Woodstock, which was a very famous hippie event in the 1960s. And then the second part of the second thing I wanted to note is that Kesey is characterized as an old man in the story, although in real life he would have been 34. So in some ways that illustrates he's perhaps moved beyond his psychedelic, rebellious youth, and that also might be part of the reason why he didn't attend Woodstock. And so then the story goes on when Kesey is talking to this old acquaintance of his, Sandy, who's a burned out hippie. And what really provokes Kesey in the story is that Sandy tells him about the death of an old friend named Houlihan. And that has a profound effect on Kesey, and that's part of the reason why Houlihan is akin to Superman in the title, The Day After Superman Died. And then he falls asleep and he has this long dream in which he reflects back on his time at Stanford, where he witnessed a fight between this guy named Lars Dolph and Houlihan. And he just gets really deep into that story. But one thing I found that was really interesting about this sort of dream state monologue that he had was this quote where he said, it all started in California, went haywire in California, and now spreads out from California like a crazy tumor under the hide of the whole continent. And I think that shows 2 things. For one, it shows that Kesey's time at Stanford in California had a profound effect on his life and on his personality. And then on the other hand, it also shows how California was the birthplace of the hippie movement.
So I'm going to be discussing The Search for the Secret Pyramid, which was the next assigned reading. And just to jog everyone's memory, this is about Kesey or Debris and his acquaintance Jack on a quest in Egypt for the Hall of Records. So one thing that I really liked about this short story was that it provided this international setting that we really haven't seen before. And so as Kesey is assuming the guise of Debris, we get to see this side to him that we really haven't ever seen in any of the other works, which is that he is a world traveler who really enjoyed wild journeys, quests, and adventures. Another thing that I found to be unique and really enjoyed about this short story was the writing style. So in this story, it features a dated journal, which isn't seen in the other stories we've read so far. And I think this writing style provides kind of this more personal perspective, as we are literally reading Debris' journal, which uncovers Kesey's internal thoughts and gives the reader a really intimate perspective on a part of Kesey's life. One theme that I felt was pretty apparent throughout this entire story was the theme of defeat, or kind of this feeling of being stuck. And so this can be seen in Debris or Kesey's personal life as he describes being unable to create or finish a work. And there's a quote on this slide that describes that. And so that's kind of something that Molly and George in Friday's Zoom meeting talked about, how after One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and later in Kesey's life, he really struggled to create. And however, although this theme is seen in both Kesey's personal life or Debris' personal life, it can also be seen in characters that Kesey meets in Egypt, such as Mirage, who desperately wants a better life for his son, as he doesn't want him to be stuck in poverty like he has been for his entire life.
So I'm going to be discussing the short story Killer, which was another one of the assigned readings. Killer describes a night on Ken Kesey's farm. In the story, Ken Kesey, among other things, takes drugs on the infamous bus that was driven around the country, and we all know had a huge impact on the entire United States. And then also describes some other adventures on their farm with a goat and then the swimming and some other different things that just happened on his farm. So what was really important to me in this story is that it helped to reinforce ideas that we learned earlier in the class, specifically the theme of conformity and the rejection of conformity within Ken Kesey's life, as well as the influence of drugs within Ken Kesey's life. You can clearly see that while reading this story, drugs, including strong drugs, are frequently used by both Ken Kesey as well as his friends, and it's really normalized within that little culture that he'd created on his farm. Personally, I know that reading this story helped to give a personal view into these themes that I just mentioned. We had never really listened or heard anything directly from Ken Kesey's perspective. And so having this additional understanding, I know was really helpful for me and then other people who read this short story, and understanding these themes and how they directly related to Ken Kesey's life.
I wanted to consider the evolution of Kesey's writing and why he chose to publish this work in the way that he did. One of the things you see in this book is a lot more personal anecdotes. We're getting a more intimate look at his life, although in interviews with reporters, Kesey was reluctant to disclose exactly how much of this was truth and how much was embellished. This is later in life after his jaunt around the US with the Merry Pranksters, and we see a lot of continuity of content. So we have the farm, we have Devery and his wife Betsy, but there's also stories coming from all over the world and all over the US showing that Kesey is well-traveled, reflecting on his life. This story was originally meant to be packaged in pamphlets that were then mailed out to readers who had purchased a box beforehand. The idea was that Demon Box was quite literally a box, and each story was representing some sort of demon in someone's life. Ultimately, publishers did not like that idea, and Kesey didn't really trust publishers to be true to his vision, so he took a lot of the unfinished or short stories and decided to publish them so that he had some say over the construction of the literature, not just being thrown together by someone who didn't understand what he was trying to say. And then here are some discussion questions that we've prepared for y'all. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.